Today we are going to learn about how you are going to control your hosting. So on the day one, we learned about what are the different types of hosting, how you can set it up. On day two, we actually learned more about how you can set up hosting on local environment and what kind of things you need to consider before configuring it. Now you have all of these things set up, you have purchased the hosting and everything. Now is the time on how you can control different variables and how you can interact with your machine, that is the server that is running online. And with these controls you can perform various actions like or adding more files, adding new kind of settings, maybe giving someone's access, rerouting some kind of application. So we'll learn about all those things in today's session. So back to me, I'm Aman, Chief Technology Officer at Twimbit and also lead of mobile web dev. Okay, so today our agenda is to cover three different types of ways by which we can interact with our server. One of them is cPanel, control panel. So cPanel and Plesk are two different methods. Some of them have different name, but the overall philosophy of controlling a server remains same. So there is one called a cPanel. Then you have file transmission protocol or FTP, and then you have SSH, that is secure shell. So we'll learn about them one by one. So first of all, what is a control panel? Control panel is a service which provides a graphical interface to the web server, and it just makes things a lot easier. You can log into the control panel by visiting a certain number of port, and then you can control all the variables that you want for your servers. Now with this, you can add multiple people in this control panel. For example, if you want to add certain people with certain rights for certain directories, you can do that also. And then you can have these functionalities both for dedicated servers and virtual private server. So imagine cPanel like an interface to interact with your server. By default, when the server comes, there is no such thing called as cPanel. You have to use SSH to communicate with the machine. But if you are coming with a managed hosting or a shared hosting or a VPS, they sometimes install cPanel by default in their machine and just provide you the default configurations. You can log into the cPanel and can access everything that you want to access with this thing. You can install cPanel on your own on any server. It is actually offered as a service. I think the license cost of cPanel is around like 1500 rupees per month, per year. But if you are buying this from a hosting retailer, they will give you this as a complimentary service because they purchase cPanel for all their servers by default. It is same as using command prompt or Windows GUI in order to interact with the machine. So what are the different things that you can actually do with the cPanels? First thing is obviously you can publish your own website. You can create emails and calendar. If you have a managed hosting and you have a domain, you can create free of cost business emails with your cPanel. All cPanels come with this configuration of creating email accounts. Then you can also backup, transfer, and manage different files in different directories. You can manage different domains. You can, if your hosting allows, you can add multiple domains to the same web server, or maybe different domains pointing to the same directory or things like that. And then how you can launch the database, manipulate things between database. Now let's quickly jump and let me show you how cPanel actually looks like in a real life. So we'll go to our server, that is Twimcast. So the easy way to visit any cPanel is, if it comes with your configuration, is by visiting twimcast.com, like whatever your domain name is /cpanel, or otherwise in some case they also provide you with a URL. So for example, here I have a WHM console and they have provided me a custom URL. When you will be purchasing your hosting service for the first time, this URL is provided by them in your email configurations. So let's assume that your cPanel is located at this location. So when we go, this forwards us to port 2083. So this is the open port, which can also be used to access the cPanel. Now, if I change the port, the whole website is going to change. So this is an interesting thing. Apart from routes and paths and parameters, ports are also an interesting way of showing different contents on different times. So let's go back to port 2083. And we have already set up a username and password, so let's log in. It's very important to keep this both credentials safe and also to use high proficient passwords. because if this is compromised, there is no going back. Anybody can log into your cPanel and delete all the files and delete all your website data, and you cannot do anything about it. So make sure that you enable things like two-factor authentications, or just use a strong password whenever you are dealing with this thing. So this is how a cPanel looks like, and these are all the widgets. Sometimes there are more widgets and sometimes they are less, but more often it will look like something like this. Now I will go through most important parts of cPanel, and it's pretty easy to understand. There is nothing much complicated. Sometimes you just need to make sure that how things are working around. So first thing is file manager. So like your C drive or any other drive in your machine, the cPanel file manager contains all the different files of your backend or front end that are needed in order to execute your web application. And all this information is actually stored in your public HTML. So whatever goes inside public HTML is the website that will be used to show this domain. So inside this, then you can have other folders that might be pointing to another websites. So that's totally fine. You can host multiple websites inside public HTML, and we'll see how you can set up those network in tomorrow's session. Then sometime it gives much more features like images. Let me go quickly through it. And yeah, so here it is, the FTP accounts. By default, you get only one single FTP account to access your server, but then you can create more FTP accounts. And in next slide, we will see how you can create your own FTP account. You can also create your own backups, download data from backups. You can also integrate your Git if your cPanel has this feature. So what this will actually do, it will pull all the data from GitHub repositories directly inside your cPanel file manager. Yeah. So next you have similar thing called as phpMyAdmin. Now we already have tried phpMyAdmin yesterday also, and that is how you can manipulate, create new database, connect your database remotely, backup your database. All these things are actually inside databases. Then sometimes it's also have tools like SEO and marketing tools. I have never used them myself. I prefer using third-party much better tools, but you can give it a try. Then this is the domain where you manage your own networking and things like how you have to publish your site, how you have to manage the domains, how you have to point it. Then here is the DNS zone editor, the one that we were talking about, which decides which domain points to which server. And you have aliases. That means if two servers look same, so how you have to configure that. So more about this tomorrow. This is a specific, very important part of posting. So next section is emails. So in the email section, you can create email accounts for your employees, your co-workers and all that. For that, just you need to go inside email accounts and create a new email like this. And then you also need to set up something called as, I think that is not here, but sometimes it comes with a built-in mailbox. This doesn't have a mailbox. So this allows you to forward your emails to another address. So what will actually happen is, this is a like separate topic that I can create a video on. You can have your business domain like aman@wembed.com and open it inside Gmail. So you don't need G Suite to have a business email inside Gmail. This is a good trick, and I can create another video on this and I can share this with you. And this is what you actually do with your email accounts. You can create email accounts, create filters and all that. So all the email things are actually done in this part. Then to see how your server is performing, if there are any errors or something like that, this information goes inside metrics part. You can see the analytics, how much people are coming. You can see the error log. If your website is facing any errors, all these errors are stored in the error log. And then you have security. Here is where you actually install the SSL certificates. You have the SSH access, which we'll be using in the upcoming slides. And you can also scan your website for viruses. This is also inside the security. You can block a certain IP if you don't want them to access. You have two-factor authentication that we were discussing. You can enable this to make your cPanel more secure. Then this is the software part. Right now, this cPanel is hosting Apache. It's not listed over here, but cPanel usually hosts Apache. For example, for Windows iOS, we use Plesk. So these are the differentiation, how it actually goes with. So cPanel can only control Apache, and it can also control, I think, Ruby and Node.js. So those are good things. So as you can see, you have PHP peer packages. These are different ways of interacting with your PHP. You can have application manager to add more apps. Then there is something called a Softaculous app installer, in which you can install different web apps directly from here. And then in advance, you have virus scanner, you have your own terminal that can you can access your whole machine with this terminal. This is like same as Google Cloud Console. This is same as like that. Then you have your own preferences. There is nothing important over here. The most important parts were file manager, creating your email accounts, setting up domains, managing SSL certificates, managing PHP versions, and things like that. So let's get back to our slides. Okay, so the next thing is SSH. Yeah, we skipped these ones. Okay. The next thing is file transmission protocol, file transfer protocol. I think it's one or the same thing. So what FTP actually does is it helps you to transfer data between two different computers. So generally you would say, yeah, that is what actually LAN does. But FTP specifically is to transfer files only. It doesn't execute anything on the way. Like when you are accessing a website on the internet, it's actually downloading the content in the browser and then showing it. But FTP has the sole purpose of just transferring files from one place to another. There are different types of FTP again, which are SFTP, FTPS, which just stands for much secure way of controlling FTP. But the underlying principle remains same, that FTP allows you to transfer file between your different devices. Now, different devices can also be your computer and your server. And we'll see how you can transfer your file from your local machine to a server. So during this connection, like the server and clients are talking to each other, this cannot remain for infinite time. There needs to be a specific window for which it is doing that. And after you have transmitted your files and everything, then the uplink between your machine and the server is disconnected, so that anybody else cannot do that. And you need a certain kind of permission to do that. Let's see what those are permissions are. So these are the 4 steps that are involved when you are connecting with your FTP. The first one is the request part, in which your FTP client, in this case your machine or laptop, is connecting with the server. So this is the request. So then server responds with its kind of request, that if it's like having the right credentials, and if this response is good, then you can start sending files to the FTP or downloading files to the FTP. And once your data channel is done, these two are actually in control channel, and then transfer is in the data channel. And when these things are done, then your connection can be terminated, so that anybody else cannot join this uplink and can configure your FTP. So what are the things that we require for FTP is that obviously we require login credentials. We need to know some kind of FTP command. Then we need to know what are the browser directory in which we are going to upload our files. So these are the process. It helps you to authenticate if these credentials were right or wrong. It also shows the part of directories. It also there is a certain port assignment. So FTP actually operates on port 20. It cannot operate on any other port, maybe sometime 21 or 22, depending upon the server displacement, but generally it operates on port 20 to 22. So let's go ahead and see ourselves how does FTP, you can access something with FTP. What I will do is I will actually go to another cPanel account so that we don't mess anything up with this one. This is a WHM, which stands for Web Host Manager. It just with WHM you can host multiple cPanels at a time, but you won't need that unless you are a service provider like me. So let's go to this one, key events. It provides you an easy shortcut, and you can open your cPanel without remembering the password for everyone. So let's go to FTP accounts option. There is one FTP client already, but let's create another one. So we'll create test. Our domain for FTP account is going to be keyevents.co, and let me set the password. I won't tell you, of course. Let me generate it and copy it instantly. Okay. Once you have done this, you need to provide it the access. Generally, if you are going to provide it the access for the whole file system, you have to give it for the home directory. So you have home / the name of your website / whatever directory you want to give. If you just want it for the hosting website, then you want to give public HTML. So public HTML is the place where you host your files. In this case, our website is hosted here, public HTML. So we'll give that access. So let's go ahead and create this account. Okay, so it says we have already used maximum allotted FTP accounts because that might be a permission. So let's delete an existing one. Okay, we might need to refresh this thing. So let me show this thing. Go inside. Okay, yeah, so I have set the FTP account to null. Maybe because of security concern, let me change this setting. By default, you won't have any kind of problems like this because you won't need WHM. Let's reload. Okay, so our account is created. Now, for accessing FTP, we will need actually a FTP client. My favorite one so far has been FileZilla. I know that's a funny name, but that's the best software to connect with your server. So what we'll do in this, we'll go ahead and go in Site Manager and create a new site named as test. Now you will need all this information. Now we'll go back to our server to get all this information. Configure FTP client. Now it is offering you all the settings that you need in order to connect with your FTP. So FTP server name is ftp.keyevents.co. Let's copy this, paste it over here. What is the port that it has given us? The port is 21. So, and the username is test@keyevents.co. We'll go for the normal settings and enter our username and password. And where did I actually copy my password? Over here. So let's go ahead and connect. Okay, now it's connecting with our server. These are the different statuses, as you can see. Let's go ahead and connect with another service. So if you are using a product like PHP Storm or WebStorm, they have the permission to access the FTP directly. So now I will be showing you directly the demo of an FTP inside JetBrains. Okay, let's go ahead in the remote host part. So for PHP Storm or any JetBrains product, you actually need to go in the remote host. So right now we don't have any configuration. Let's go ahead and name it test. So with the same that we did with FileZilla, we are going to add the same thing. So in this case, it's ftp.keyevents.co. The user is test@keyevents.co. And we have password. Let's test out the connection. Host not found. So that means our host is incorrect somehow. I have no idea why it's not working. Yep, Now it's successful. You see, these are the stupid things that happen sometimes. So let's save our settings. And now you can see, using the FTP, all our directory contents will be visible over here. We'll go to our Twimcast. We'll see that there are all the files that, so right now we have given the access to public HTML. So that's why we will be only able to see the files inside public HTML. So this is how you can access the FTP. So if you want to, if you are inside things like in PHP Storm, you can directly drag and drop a file and add it in this directory. And what it will do, it will upload this file to the your remote server. You can do the same thing with different folders. You can upload a whole folder, which I won't do right now. So this is the way how you can upload different files, and you can directly edit any file if you want to make any changes inside your IDE, and then you can upload it again and it will be saving that version. So next is SSH. SSH stands for Secure Shell, and it's a protocol with which you can access the command line of your server from your own machine. So SSH, let me read it out. SSH is a protocol for secure remote access to machine over untrusted networks. Okay, nice. SSH is a replacement for Telnet, RSH, RLogin, and can replace FTP. Nice. So uses encryption. Okay, good things. So actually, if you when we are transmitting any files and things directly using cPanel or FTP, there is nothing such as encryption. If somebody taps our connection at that instant, which a hacker I think can do, I have never tried doing that. So he can actually see the directory contents, whatever we are sending to our server. But if you are going to encrypt this thing, like using a salt key or something in encryption, like how the encryption actually works. So with SSH, you can encrypt all the content, and only the person with these keys, public keys and private keys, they can only access that server. So that is actually can replace FTP. FTP is not a secure file transmission protocol. So if you add a SSH key to this thing, you can actually have a secure file transmission protocol. And it is a totally different layer from how it handles the FTP or TCP. So it's kind of secure. So you might use it regularly if you want to access your servers, things like that. And SSH is like the most widely used to connect and communicate with the server, apart from the server console itself. So what are the things that we actually need for SSH is a client, that is you in this case. Then we need a server. Then we need a key that both server and client needs to have. And then there needs to be a session that needs to connect both of these things. Cool. So let's, I'm not super sure about this thing. I have never tried connecting with SSH on cPanel, but it's first time for everything. So let's go ahead and try doing that. So this says SSH access, and we don't have any SSH key right now. So let's go ahead and try to create a new SSH key. By the way, I would just, as a precaution, I would delete the FTP account that I've just created. Okay, so that there is no connection between me and my server. Let's go in SSH, manage SSH keys, generate a new key. So this is the key that we were talking about that is required by server and the client. We'll create a key. I will set up a password for the key. Type of encryption. Now these are the different encryption types, DSA or RSA. Then you can also keep the size. Generally the default settings are okay. We'll name the key as test. Okay, this is how a key looks like, and this is the key signature. Go back. Let's download this. Okay. Now we need to authorize. Yeah, now our test.pub, the key that we have created just now, is authorized to control the server. Okay, now we have a key, we have authorized the key. Let's try and go ahead and connect with our server. For that, you will need again a SSH client. You can do directly it using your command line tool, but I prefer using Putty, P-U-T-T-Y. It's a funny name again. You can download this utility, and this can help you connect with your server. Again, we'll use the same settings as we used in the FTP. Events.co, the port should be 2022 and the connection type is SSH, as you can see over here. And we will with auth. I really don't know much about this thing, so I'm just trying first time for myself. So for this, you might need a server IP address. This is the address for your server as usual. Let's go to our home screen. Your IP address of the server is visible in this part, shared IP address. Connection refused, obviously because we haven't applied the key yet. Sid, are you in this call? Okay, our engineer Sid is not here. He is much more proficient in using SSH, so I was just wondering if we can help. But let's try to find that option myself. Logging. Strange. I think I need to update this utility first. This doesn't support SSH keys. So anyways, what I would actually do, I would go back to the console of my cPanel because that also has a SSH access inside it. And I would try doing those things that I would do with the SSH access inside my terminal. So for this, you need to know the CLI of your own server. In this case, if I'm using Linux, I should know the Linux command that I want to operate this thing with. If you will be able to access your SSH directly inside your system or machine, you will see a similar console like this. And now you just need to have the same Linux command that you used to use in your Linux machine. For example, ls is used to list out the directory, and you can see all the directories are listed like this. So this just provides a more secure and more edge above our system. So let's go ahead inside our public HTML directory. If you are not familiar with how you can use this Unix commands, you just need to learn them first before accessing all these things. So it's just all the directory moving and all these things that you used to do with certain kind of things like FTP. You can also do with this, but this connection right now is totally secure. It's not talking with any other client. The same thing is possible inside the SSH window also. I would try that whenever we re-upload the video, I will try to keep the session with FTP using your own machine, how you can do it on Mac and how you can do it on Windows. But surprisingly, I'm not able to do that right now. So I would remember to do that. So with this, we have completed our FTP part also. Just to quickly recap, today we see that there are 3 different ways by which you can talk with your server. One is called a cPanel, other one is FTP, in which you can transfer your files, and the third one is SSH, in which you can access your SSH server using a SSH client like PuTTY and have a key in order to access that thing. So just to confirm, there are other ways of communicating with a server also. Like, it's not always important you will have what you call it, a cPanel. Sometimes people also have installed something called as Plesk. Plesk is another software, and it works exactly same as how a cPanel works. There is not much of difference between them. But if you go into other cloud providers like AWS or Google Cloud, you will see a different theme in itself. So our second last and last session will be in that we will actually see how you can control and manage your services on Google Cloud, DigitalOcean, AWS. and more on that on upcoming